As an agent of the BADTFL, Curtis Wilson was sent on a mission to observe and investigate a group called the Free States. A band of people distrusting the overall government and trying to take matters into their own hands. Fortunately, Agent Wilson didn't have to work alone on this case. Initially assigned to assist the agent, the local sheriff became his friend quickly and assisted him through other investigations. This man's name was Scott Darcy. As part of these investigations, Wilson and Darcy had to look into the local Vault-Tec University, where he encountered Shelby O'Rourke, a student at the time working on a thesis study on the existence of cryptids such as the Snallygaster and the Grafton Monster. Checking her background did not reveal anything suspicious, but still Curtis saw her as a handy asset for the future in his own investigations. Among his own investigations, Curtis became interested in multiple conspiracies originating from their own government. He later quit his job and started to work on these conspiracies. Both Scott Darcy and Curtis Wilson survived the bombs, and Curtis saw a unique opportunity in this, getting to places which were off limits to him. No law to follow. But before they could finish their investigations, Scott Darcy turned up dead, which led to Curtis locking down his notes and work and abandon their place. Nothing else was ever heard of Curtis Wilson after this event. But his logs and notes can still be found in a small cabin in the Savage Divide, abandoned and partially destroyed. Taking a closer look at the terminal and note reveals a little bit about his prior time and why he had left, but the most interesting thing are the investigation reports found on said terminal. 6 entries. Investigation reports on multiple mysteries. But when we try to open them, but luckily their names are still visible. Some of the entries don't make sense on first glance and some seem very familiar. A mysterious set of stones stand atop a cliff in the south of the Savage Divide, carved with various inscriptions that, on the first glance, don't make sense. The slabs depicting several lines, circles, and something that vaguely looks like written language are the mysterious Guidestones. As part of huge speculations even in the community itself, they still are pretty much completely unexplained. Michael Blake, a professor teaching language at the Vault-Tec University, proposed that the mysterious Guidestones could be ancient petroglyphs left by the indigenous people of the region. As usually, the most simple is also the correct answer. To me, the inscriptions on the Guidestones don't look like anything written and don't look like something that the people a few thousand years ago would draw. But yet they stand tall and the drawings on the stones are real. Jacqueline, a former VTU student, had a different idea. What if they are of extraterrestrial origin? They are written or drawn in a language not known to men and seem to depict what no one can make sense of. But for sure these two might have found out something they would not have imagined. Jacqueline instructed her teacher Michael Blake that she would feel safer if he moved the translation key offline and that she keeps the original notes on the subject with her. So if someone got onto them, they still wouldn't have all the pieces necessary. Does this mean Jacqueline and Blake managed to translate the Guidestones? And if yes, what is written on them? The community has been trying to solve this mystery for a long time now. A lot of theories are floating around the internet, but none of these theories have been proven right yet. Some say it could be a map. Others say it is an inscription. And some think it's an instruction on the microchip. But ultimately we don't know. Curtis' involvement into the case is unknown. But he most certainly played his role in all this, as it was mentioned on Blake's terminal that even Agent Wilson was taking precautions. So someone was onto them. But who exactly is unknown. The Zetans are unlikely, as they have other methods of solving their problems. It is possible that the government was behind this. The government probably knew about the Zetans and wanted to cover it up, as this knowledge could lead to mass hysteria. And some suspect that some technological feats have been achieved through reverse engineering alien tech, such as plasma weapons. If someone would have the translation key to the Guidestones and it would indeed originate from extraterrestrials, the government would be pretty interested in this and also would neutralize the people knowing about it.
See the world now through his eyes, children.
As part of Appalachian lore, the Mothman probably takes one of the biggest spots. A cryptid creature said to roam the Appalachian Mountains since decades, the very first sighting dating back to 1966. Soon after the Mothman started to appear, weird things started to happen. Lights in the sky, UFOs, and the so-called men in black visiting the town of Point Pleasant. Even in pre-war times, a cult already started to build up its ranks, holding meetings in secret and praying together to the Mothman. In the post-war era, the cult of the Mothman already is an impressively big group, covering a lot of ground in Appalachia. Multiple mysteries revolve around the cult and the Mothman. No other mysteries are quite as eerie as this one. Only days before the catastrophic event of the bombs falling, one of the brothers of the cult had terrible dreams and convinced the members of the cult to leave Point Pleasant, the at this moment only location of the cult, to flee to the Lucky Hole mine, where they stayed for a while and sat out the catastrophe. After a while, stories of strange sightings reached the Lucky Hole mine. It is said that creatures were seen, which descriptions vaguely resembled the Mothman. Trapped by the fallout, the cult had to wait to resurface. During this time, a part of the cult turned into darker forms of worship and communed with an entity known to them as the firstborn of the wood. The same brother who had the dreams took some of the cultists and set out into the world again to search for the fabled Mothman. This brother was Brother Charles. And with this act, he unknowingly caused a huge tear into the cult and basically created a new faction. The people who set out in search became known as the Enlightened. The people who chose to stay later became known as the followers of the Winged One, with the first priestess of the woods as their leader. These followers later set out into the world in raging crusades, claiming their ground, and became what we encountered during our travels. Apart from the different Mothman factions, the cults are connected to a completely different mystery: the interloper and the visitor. The interloper is what the Mothman cult calls the firstborn of the wood. But basically everything around the interloper is pretty vague. But this is a rabbit hole for another day. What Curtis Wilson has found out or what he had to do with the cult is unknown yet again. But in the end, there will be a connection to all of these mysteries that might be telling us something about the future of the game. Observatories are a place of knowledge, learning, and fascination, where great minds achieve great things and the very fabric of reality can be studied. One of these places was the ATLAS Observatory, a massive research observatory studying the atmosphere and space. Although the people of Appalachia didn't seem to be suspicious, Curtis Wilson was. On a first glance, nothing seems to be out of the ordinary with the observatory. But he didn't trust this innocent image. While exploring the observatory before the Brotherhood of Steel moved in, multiple terminals could be found in the observatory which tell us an interesting story. Project Atlas was led by Major Kirk Bentley, and its goal was to create an atmospheric terraforming laser accelerator system, or for short ATLAS, using it in war to change the weather to their advantage. Under the guidance of Kirk Bentley, the project only showed moderate success and there was only very few progress made. So the US Army, who was funding this whole project, replaced Kirk Bentley. On January 24, 2076, Lieutenant Colonel James Oberlin took over the project. After the change, progress was quickly made and the project seemed to bear fruits. Some tests were made with Atlas which seemed to be promising, causing near whiteout blizzards in mid-August. But this wasn't as unnoticeable as the research team had hoped. Local media outlets were picking up on the strange weather behaviors. But to their luck, no one seemed to make a connection to Atlas. After the team's success, the project was fully approved and funded by the US Army, sparking hope in the team to work on the project without getting defunded and with near limitless resources. But on October 16, 2077, James Oberlin, director of Project Atlas, received a letter from Washington. The project was to be defunded and shut down. But further instructions would follow. These instructions sadly never arrived James, as a few days later the bombs would fall. Curtis Wilson, just as the local media, picked up on this and started to investigate on his own. Unsure of what he found out, it must have been significant enough for him to write that all down and ultimately locking it up on the terminal. After the Steel Dawn update, the Brotherhood of Steel moved into the observatory, transforming it into their base of operations. After this, we sadly were not able to uncover this mystery anymore, as the Brotherhood seemed to got rid of the terminals and notes that were left there. But as it seems, the Brotherhood did not catch up to the true purpose of Atlas. Maybe for good. Curtis did not return to this place after the war as far as we know. But he most certainly was onto something. As we learned the last few years ourselves, a quarantine can be a harsh experience. It can be depressing, boring, and sometimes even life-changing. This is what the inhabitants of Huntersville had to go through too. A town-wide quarantine locking up the whole place. The entrances to the town blocked by soldiers of the Army. The U.S. Army guarding a quarantine zone is something unusual and always get people to speculate. But Scott Darcy and Curtis Wilson wanted to do more than just speculate. The two men waited for the right moment and tried to scoop out what was going on in Huntersville. In March 2075, Huntersville was given out a rural development grant from the government, with the goal of raising the living conditions of rural areas such as Huntersville. A few months into the program, things started to pick up quickly. West Tech just finished the construction of their new laboratory just outside of town, and with that a lot of traffic came into town. Money was spent and the inhabitants thought about opening their own new businesses. After a while, in February 2076, a lot of the townsfolk have fallen ill. And some inhabitants started to notice that traffic coming from West Tech has all but stopped. This trend continued for a while, and the doctors from West Tech helping out the time told the folks that it has to be a rare flu virus and that this will be over soon. Time passed and the conditions in town didn't get better. The sick were changing color, as if their skin changed completely. Their hair would fall out and the people started to get scared. People were slowly transforming over time, and guards with gas masks were guarding the entrances to Huntersville. The fear in the people rose and were clueless as to what to do. Apparently even the soldiers of the 12th Mountain Division, the division assigned to contain Huntersville, didn't really had a clue of what was going on in town. Sergeant Jake Bianchi described his experience as strange, asking himself why the U.S. Army was guarding this place on behalf of West Tech. What could go on in there that a civilian organization had the command over parts of the U.S. Army? The soldiers were ordered to get some people out of there. One of these people was a child called Dalton Sherman, who most likely was brought to Sugar Grove for further experimentation. So what happened in Huntersville? You see, about 3 months into the rural development program, a new water recycling infrastructure was installed. This event was the catalysator for everything that happened in Huntersville. West Tech, the ones who installed the infrastructure, did not start the program out of kindness. They turned Huntersville into their playground, and the inhabitants were their test subjects. The primary focus of the water infrastructure was not to recycle the water but to contaminate it with the forced evolutionary virus. What the folks of Huntersville experiencing was not some flu. They mutated over time and thus became the super mutants inhabiting Huntersville post-war. There is actually a cut part to Huntersville relating to Curtis Wilson and Scott Darcy. At one point in development you could find a holotape where Wilson and Darcy were scooping out the place but got caught and ran away, losing a holotape in the process. On this holotape would have been their experience scooping out the place and talking about what they see. But as I just mentioned, this holotape was cut and thus cannot be counted towards our investigations. This entry is the one giving me some stuff to think about. There are basically no informations, ties to someone or something, and no clue at all. This is the point where you, the viewer, are needed. Help to find clues and ties. Together we can find out more than we might think. If you know something or have an idea, tell us in the comments. So far we know nothing. I have been searching the internet for days and not a single explanation was good enough. This entry might be solved in the future, but for now it stays unexplained. I have some ideas what it could refer to, but nothing in this chapter is canon and am only talking of my mind. So one idea I had is that the domestic bugs in the pre-war era were spying devices. I remember being told that China used bugs and spiders to spy on people, but I can't remember where I know that from or if it was in game or not. But it wouldn't be far off. We know for a fact that the Institute used crows as cameras to watch over the Commonwealth, and they also created other creatures like synthetic gorillas. Little side story here, I was watching YouTube shorts when I came across a specific short. It was about the Roach King and Reggie Blattaria. If you ever played Fallout 3 or 4, you might have stumbled upon them. As his name suggests, the Roach King has somehow tamed roaches and has thus become their king. How he did that is unknown, but it seems interesting that it is possible to tame roaches. Reggie Blattaria is basically the Commonwealth's version of the Roach King, as his name is actually Latin and roughly translates to King Roach. As his Fallout 3 counterpart, he carries either a minigun or a Gatling laser and tamed roaches. Did Curtis possibly stumble upon a person who did just the same? Someone who found out how to tame them? Who knows? There also is the antagonizer in Fallout 3, which basically is the same just with ants and a side of Marvel. Sometimes if you are at the right spot at the right time, a mysterious signal is interfering with your radio. Strange sounds are coming from this frequency. Sometimes it sounds like someone's talking and other times it's like static. Following these signals might get you abducted and sometimes getting shot at. But in the end, the culprits are always the same. Some strange folk. Small in stature and greenish skin. Their heads are bigger than the ones of usual humans. Big eyes and sharp teeth. Zetans. Or more commonly known as aliens. The mysterious signal picked up are the signals of the aliens. Curtis Wilson was one of the people who most likely believed aliens were among us. After uncovering such things as the quarantine of Huntersville, the aliens don't seem so unrealistic anymore. As far as we know, the Zetans were around our Earth for a long time, abducting people from different eras and cryogenically freezing them. The people were experimented on and watched over. Curtis must have been one of the people picking up this mysterious signal, as the entry is called such. But what he found out is ultimately unknown. But he might have known more than we might think. People were knowing about Zetans. Depictions of aliens often depict them correctly. Greenish skin, frail, with big heads and eyes. We can find them on comic books and even in Nuka World in form of animatronics. It's heavily suggested in that plasma weapons were designed by the US military based on salvaged alien technology. So what did he find out? And did Curtis know about Homer Saperstein, or did he even work with him? These were all the entries on the terminal. All entries relating to some conspiracy proven to be real. Well, besides the domestic bugs. Some of the we even can uncover ourselves. As of now, we don't know where Curtis Wilson is or if he will return at some point. As I mentioned in the video before, there is a pretty interesting connection between every single one of the entries. On the release day of Fallout 76, we were able to explore Huntersville and uncover the quarantine conspiracy. On April 14, 2020, with the Wastelanders update, the mysterious Guidestones were added. On November 24, 2020, the ATLAS Observatory got hugely expanded on in the Steel Dawn update. On December 8, 2021, we were able to explore the story behind the cult of the Mothman, which was added with the Night of the Moth update. On March 1, 2022, we got the Invaders from Beyond update, which added lore and an event relating to the Zetans. The only thing missing are the domestic bugs. If the developers keep the pattern, a domestic bugs update will come in the future. If so, I am actually looking forward to it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more mysteries covered, check out this playlist. And remember, winds howling.